From a cursed production that saw crew members breaking bones and getting food poisoning within 24 hours, to a star whose nose job made her completely unrecognizable overnight, the beloved 1987 dance drama harbored some truly bizarre secrets. Canadian border guards thought the film footage was pornography. Executives wanted to burn the negative, and the most iconic line was almost cut for being too corny. Here are the 15 weird facts you didn't know about Dirty Dancing 1987. Fact 1. Canadian authorities confiscated film as suspected porn. During production of Dirty Dancing in 1986, the filmmakers faced an unexpected and embarrassing problem that had nothing to do with dancing or romance. Canadian border authorities kept confiscating and holding up the film's dailies because they were convinced the movie was a pornographic production. The trouble started whenever the production team tried to transport their daily footage across the Canadian border for processing. Border officials would see the title Dirty Dancing on the film canisters and shipping documents, and immediately assumed they were dealing with adult entertainment. This wasn't just a one-time misunderstanding either. The delays happened repeatedly throughout the filming process, creating serious headaches for the production schedule. Eleanor Bergstein, the film's screenwriter who based the story on her own childhood experiences, later revealed just how problematic this situation became. The border delays were so frequent and disruptive that she seriously considered changing the movie's title altogether. Her backup choice was I Was a Teenage Mambo Queen, which came from her own memories of winning mambo contests as a young girl in the Catskills. The irony of the situation wasn't lost on anyone involved in the production. Here was a film that would eventually become a beloved family favorite and cultural phenomenon, yet authorities were treating it like contraband simply because of its provocative-sounding name. The production team had to repeatedly explain that despite the suggestive title, they were making a mainstream romantic drama about summer romance and coming of age. This border confusion highlighted just how much the title Dirty Dancing stood out in 1987, when even the name alone was enough to raise eyebrows and cause official suspicion. The film equipment they were using was apparently not sophisticated enough to easily demonstrate the innocent nature of the footage to skeptical border guards, making each crossing a potential ordeal for the already low-budget production. Fact 2. Billy Zane was fired for zero chemistry. Billy Zane was actually cast as Johnny Castle and had already started filming Dirty Dancing when the producers made the dramatic decision to fire him and find a replacement. The reason wasn't his acting ability or dancing skills, but rather the complete lack of romantic chemistry between him and Jennifer Grey, who was playing Baby. At the time of casting, Zane was only 20 years old and represented exactly the kind of young, handsome leading man that studios typically wanted for romantic roles. The producers initially thought he would be perfect for the part of the charismatic dance instructor who sweeps Baby off her feet during her family's summer vacation at a resort in the Catskills. However, once filming began and the cameras started rolling, it became painfully obvious that something crucial was missing between the two actors. Screen tests and early footage revealed that Zane and Grey simply didn't spark the kind of electric connection that the story demanded. The romantic scenes fell flat, and the passionate dance sequences lacked the heat and intensity that would make audiences believe in their forbidden love affair. This lack of chemistry posed a serious problem for a movie that was entirely built around the romantic and sexual tension between its two main characters. Without that essential spark, the entire foundation of the film would crumble. No matter how well choreographed the dance numbers were, or how compelling the supporting storylines might be. The producers made the difficult but necessary decision to let Zane go, even though this meant starting over with a new actor and potentially reshooting scenes that had already been completed. This casting change ultimately led them to Patrick Swayze, who was 10 years older than Zane, but brought the mature sensuality and dance experience that the role truly needed. The chemistry between Swayze and Grey became one of the film's greatest strengths, and a key reason for its massive success. Fact 3. The production was literally cursed on day 6. The cast and crew of Dirty Dancing started believing their movie was actually cursed after experiencing what can only be described as the worst single day in film production history. Day 6 of filming brought such a string of disasters that everyone involved began wondering if they should abandon the project entirely. The trouble started when burglars broke into the film's rehearsal space overnight and ransacked the entire area, stealing valuable equipment and props that the production desperately needed. This forced the crew to scramble for replacement materials and completely reorganize their shooting schedule. But that was just the beginning of their problems. While the production team was dealing with the break-in, severe flooding hit the mountainous area where they were filming in Virginia and North Carolina. The floodwaters blocked all the mountain roads leading to their hotel, effectively trapping the cast and crew and making it impossible to transport equipment or people to the filming locations. As if stolen equipment and blocked roads weren't enough, the crew members themselves started falling victim to a series of bizarre accidents and illnesses. The set decorator fell off his ladder and injured himself badly enough to require medical attention. The second assistant director broke her wrist in a separate accident. A wardrobe assistant broke her toe. 3 different crew members came down with severe food poisoning at the same time. To complete this day of absolute chaos, an art department station wagon somehow crashed into and destroyed a prop department van. Though the exact details of how this vehicle collision happened have never been fully explained. All of these disasters occurred within a single 24-hour period, leading the superstitious members of the cast and crew to genuinely believe that some kind of supernatural force was working against their low-budget film. The combination of crime, natural disaster, multiple injuries, illness, and vehicle destruction in one day seemed too coincidental to be mere bad luck. Fact 4. Executive wanted to burn the negative. When the Dirty Dancing production team finished filming and put together their first rough cut of the movie, they arranged a special screening in May of 1987 for producer Aaron Russo to get his professional opinion on what they had created. What happened next became one of the most brutally honest reactions in Hollywood history. After sitting through the entire rough version of the film, Russo's response was shockingly blunt and devastating. According to Vestron executive Mitchell Canold, who was present at the screening, Russo's complete reaction at the end of the movie was simply this: burn the negative and collect the insurance. This meant he thought the film was so bad that the studio should literally destroy all the footage and file an insurance claim rather than try to release it to theaters. Russo wasn't just some random person giving his opinion either. He was an experienced and successful producer who had worked on major films and knew the business inside and out. His harsh judgment carried significant weight in the industry, and his recommendation essentially meant he believed the movie was completely unsalvageable and would be a total financial disaster if released. The shocking thing about this reaction was that it came from someone who was supposed to be supporting the project. This wasn't a hostile critic or a competing studio executive trying to sabotage the film. This was a producer who presumably wanted the movie to succeed. Yet he was so convinced it would fail that he thought destruction was the better option than distribution. The Vestron executives themselves weren't much more optimistic about their own film either. Nobody on the production team actually liked the rough cut they had assembled, and the studio bosses were already convinced they had a major flop on their hands. The general consensus among industry professionals who saw early versions was that Dirty Dancing would be a commercial and critical failure that would quickly disappear from theaters. Fact 5. Patrick Swayze's resume read "No Dancing." Patrick Swayze's acting resume literally included the words "No Dancing" written right on it, despite the fact that he was actually a highly trained and accomplished dancer who had studied at some of the most prestigious dance schools in the country. This bizarre contradiction happened because of a serious knee injury that had plagued him for years and threatened to end any dancing career before it could really begin. Swayze had extensive training from both the Harkness Ballet School and the Joffrey Ballet School, two of the most respected dance institutions in America. He was skilled in classical ballet as well as other forms of dance, and his natural talent and years of professional training made him an ideal candidate for any role that required dancing ability. However, during his Broadway performing days, Swayze sustained a severe knee injury that was serious enough to require ongoing medical treatment. The injury was so problematic that he had to have fluid regularly drained from his knee just to manage the pain and swelling. This medical issue made it extremely difficult for him to perform the demanding physical movements that professional dancing required. Because of these ongoing knee problems, Swayze made the practical decision to specifically note "no dancing" on his professional resume to avoid being offered roles that would aggravate his injury or put him in situations where he might not be able to perform at the level expected. This notation was meant to protect both himself and potential employers from disappointment or complications. The irony is that when the Dirty Dancing producers approached him about playing Johnny Castle, a role that was entirely built around dancing expertise, Swayze was initially reluctant for exactly this reason. However, after reading the script and seeing the complexity of the character beyond just the dancing elements, he decided to take the risk and accept the part anyway, knee problems and all. Fact 6. Jennifer Grey's nose job made her invisible. Jennifer Grey underwent 2 rhinoplasty surgeries after Dirty Dancing became a massive hit, and the results were so dramatic that she became completely unrecognizable to photographers, fellow actors, and even close industry friends who had known her for years. The transformation was so extreme that Grey later said she lost both her identity and her career overnight. The trouble started when Grey decided to have what she thought would be a minor nose adjustment to help her get more diverse acting roles. Her mother and several industry advisors had suggested that her distinctive nose was limiting her casting opportunities, so Grey agreed to have the procedure done by a plastic surgeon who promised to simply fine-tune her appearance. After the first surgery, Grey was initially thrilled with the results and found herself working more than ever before. However, when she noticed a small irregularity in her nose, she went back for a second procedure to correct what seemed like a minor issue. When she woke up from that second surgery, she discovered that her entire face had been dramatically altered in ways she never expected or wanted. The most shocking example of how unrecognizable she had become happened at a movie premiere when she ran into Michael Douglas, someone she had known professionally for years. Douglas looked right at her but showed no signs of recognition whatsoever, treating her like a complete stranger. This was the first time Grey had appeared in public since her second surgery, and the experience was devastating. Even more humiliating were her encounters with photographers at red carpet events, who would look directly at her and have no idea who she was. These were people whose job it was to recognize celebrities, yet they couldn't connect this new face with the beloved star of Dirty Dancing. Grey described the experience as being like entering a witness protection program, where she had become invisible in plain sight. Fact 7. The famous giggling scene was real frustration. One of the most beloved and memorable scenes in Dirty Dancing shows Baby giggling uncontrollably while Johnny tries to teach her a sensual dance move by running his fingers down her arm, and what makes this moment so special is that absolutely none of it was scripted or planned. Jennifer Grey was genuinely ticklish, and Patrick Swayze's visible annoyance and frustration were completely authentic reactions that the cameras happened to capture. The scene was supposed to be filmed as a serious moment where Johnny shows Baby how to move sensually and connect with the music, but Grey simply could not stop herself from bursting into laughter every time Swayze touched her arm. What viewers see on screen is Grey's real ticklish response, which she was unable to control despite multiple attempts to get through the scene professionally. Swayze's irritation in the footage is equally genuine, as he was trying to maintain the romantic and serious tone that the scene required while dealing with his co-star's uncontrollable giggling fits. He later wrote about how Grey would slip into these silly moods that forced them to do scenes over and over again when she would start laughing, and this particular moment was a perfect example of that dynamic playing out on camera. The production team initially planned to reshoot the scene once Grey could compose herself and deliver the performance they originally intended. However, when the editors were going through all the footage later, they discovered this authentic moment and realized it was actually much more charming and endearing than anything they could have scripted. The decision to include this real moment of spontaneous laughter and genuine frustration turned what was meant to be a sultry dance lesson into one of the film's most human and relatable scenes, showing the natural chemistry and real personalities of both actors in a way that no amount of careful direction could have achieved. Fact 8. They spray-painted autumn leaves green. The crew of Dirty Dancing had to resort to an unusual and labor-intensive solution when they found themselves filming a summer romance story. Since the movie was supposed to take place during the warm summer months at a resort in the Catskills, but they were actually shooting in Virginia and North Carolina during the fall, they faced a major visual problem with all the changing leaves. As autumn progressed during the filming schedule, the trees around their locations began turning the brilliant oranges, reds, and browns that make fall foliage so beautiful in real life. However, these gorgeous autumn colors would have completely destroyed the illusion that the story was happening during summer vacation time, when all the leaves should have been lush and green. The production team came up with a creative but extremely time-consuming solution to this seasonal mismatch. They assigned crew members to go out with spray cans filled with green paint and literally spray paint the autumn leaves back to summer colors. This meant that workers had to climb ladders, reach into trees, and carefully paint individual leaves and branches to make them look like they belonged in July rather than October. Patrick Swayze later described this process as one of the weirdest things he had ever witnessed on a film set. He recalled seeing guys going out with spray cans and painting brown leaves green again, which struck him as completely surreal but absolutely necessary to maintain the movie's summer setting. This leaf painting operation had to be done continuously throughout the filming process, as new leaves kept changing colors and falling off the trees. The crew essentially had to fight against nature itself to keep their outdoor locations looking summery while working in increasingly cold and autumn-like conditions that made the actors shiver between takes. Fact 9. The script was rejected 43 times. The Dirty Dancing screenplay was rejected by an astounding 43 different studios before anyone was willing to take a chance on the project, making it one of the most repeatedly turned-down scripts in Hollywood history. Producer Linda Gottlieb revealed this shocking number in 2012, showing just how little faith the entertainment industry had in what would eventually become a massive cultural phenomenon. Eleanor Bergstein had finished writing the script in 1985, basing the story on her own childhood experiences at Catskills resorts, where she had witnessed the clash between different social classes and the underground world of professional dancers. However, studio executives simply couldn't see the commercial potential in a story about a sheltered teenager falling in love with a working-class dance instructor during a family vacation. The rejections came from major studios and smaller production companies alike, with industry professionals apparently unable to understand who the target audience would be for this unusual combination of romance, dance, and social commentary. Many executives probably saw the script as too niche, too nostalgic, or too focused on dancing to appeal to mainstream moviegoers. After facing rejection after rejection, the project finally found a home with Vestron Pictures, a small studio that was primarily known for their video distribution business rather than theatrical film production. Even when Vestron agreed to make the movie, they only committed to a tiny $6 million budget, which was considered extremely low even by 1980s standards. The irony of this situation became clear when Dirty Dancing went on to earn over $214 million worldwide at the box office, proving that 43 different studios had completely misjudged what audiences actually wanted to see. The film became such a success that it spawned sequels, stage adaptations, and countless imitators, making all those rejections look like major missed opportunities for the studios that passed on it. Fact 10. Swayze hated the most iconic line. Patrick Swayze absolutely despised the line, "Nobody puts baby in a corner," which became one of the most famous and quotable lines in movie history, and he fought hard to have it removed from the script because he thought it was far too corny and cheesy for the serious, dramatic moment it was meant to anchor. The line appears during the climactic final scene of the movie, when Johnny returns to confront Baby's father and rescue her from being ignored and dismissed by her family. It's supposed to be the triumphant moment when Johnny stands up for Baby, and shows that he truly cares about her as a person, not just as a summer romance. However, Swayze believed the line was so over-the-top and melodramatic that it would ruin the emotional impact of the entire scene. In his autobiography, The Time of My Life, he wrote about how much he hated that particular line and how the cast and crew did extensive rewriting for the big final scene, but that one line that he despised somehow managed to stay in the script despite his objections. The producers and writers apparently shared some of Swayze's concerns about the line because they seriously considered cutting it completely from the final version of the film. The debate about whether to keep or remove the line went on for quite some time during post-production, with various people involved in the project weighing in on whether it worked or whether it was too much. Ultimately, the decision was made to keep the line in the movie, and it ended up becoming one of the most memorable and frequently quoted pieces of dialogue from any film of the 1980s. The line has been referenced, parodied, and quoted countless times in other movies, television shows, and popular culture, proving that sometimes the lines actors hate the most are exactly the ones that resonate most strongly with audiences. Fact 11. The crawling scene was accidental goofing. One of the most memorable and sensual scenes in Dirty Dancing shows Baby and Johnny crawling toward each other dramatically on the dance studio floor while lip-syncing to the song Love is Strange. But this entire sequence was never written in the script, never choreographed, and was never intended to be part of the actual movie at all. The scene happened completely by accident when Patrick Swayze and Jennifer Grey were just goofing around between takes, trying to get into character and warm up for the real scene they were supposed to be filming. Director Emile Ardolino had put on the Mickey and Sylvia song Love is Strange to help set the mood in the dance studio, and the two actors started fooling around and improvising silly movements to the music. What the actors didn't realize was that the cameras were still rolling and capturing everything they were doing during this spontaneous moment of playfulness. Swayze and Grey had no idea they were being filmed as they crawled around on the floor, lip-syncing and being deliberately over-the-top dramatic in a way that was meant to be funny rather than serious or romantic. When director Ardolino and the editors later reviewed all the footage from that day's shooting, they discovered this unplanned moment and immediately recognized that it was actually much more interesting and compelling than anything they could have scripted. The natural chemistry and playful energy between the two actors created something that felt both intimate and authentic in a way that formal choreography might not have achieved. The decision to include this accidental footage in the final cut of the movie turned out to be brilliant, as the crawling scene became one of the film's most iconic and frequently referenced moments. What started as two actors just being silly during downtime ended up becoming a perfect example of the sexual tension and connection between their characters. Fact 12. Matthew Broderick has an uncredited cameo. Matthew Broderick makes a brief, uncredited appearance in Dirty Dancing. As one of the audience members watching the final talent show performance, and most viewers have no idea that Jennifer Grey's real-life boyfriend at the time is actually sitting right there in the crowd during the movie's climactic scene. Broderick and Grey were dating during the filming of Dirty Dancing, having met while working together on the 1986 comedy Ferris Bueller's Day Off, where Grey played Ferris's jealous sister Jeannie. Their relationship was serious enough that Broderick was spending time on the Dirty Dancing set, visiting Grey while she worked on what would become her most famous role. When it came time to film the final talent show sequence, where Johnny returns to perform with Baby in front of all the resort guests, the production needed to fill the audience with extras to make the scene look authentic and crowded. Rather than hire additional background actors, the filmmakers decided to use crew members, friends, and anyone else who happened to be around the set that day. Broderick was apparently on set during the filming of this final scene, so the directors simply had him sit in the audience along with all the other extras. Since he was just part of the background crowd and didn't have any lines or featured moments, there was no need to give him an official credit in the film, making his appearance a fun, hidden detail for sharp-eyed viewers to discover. The cameo adds an interesting layer to the movie when you know to look for it, especially considering that Broderick was watching his real-life girlfriend perform one of the most romantic and passionate dance sequences in film history with another actor. Few people notice him in the crowd during their first viewing. But once you know he's there, it becomes an amusing piece of trivia to point out to other fans. Fact 13. The water was hypothermically cold. The famous lake lift scene, where Baby and Johnny practice their dance moves in the water, was filmed in absolutely frigid conditions, with the lake temperature sitting at around 40 degrees Fahrenheit, which is cold enough to cause hypothermia, and made both actors' lips turn blue during filming. Since Dirty Dancing was being shot during the autumn months in Virginia and North Carolina, rather than the summer setting that the story called for, the water in the lake had already turned ice cold by the time they needed to film this crucial romantic scene. However, the lake sequence was such an important part of the movie that the producers couldn't simply skip it or wait for warmer weather, so they had to push forward with filming despite the dangerous conditions. Patrick Swayze later described the experience in his autobiography, calling it horrifyingly, hypothermically cold, and explaining that they had to film the scene over and over again to get it right. He also mentioned that even though Jennifer Grey was very light, when you're trying to lift someone in cold water, even the smallest person can feel like they weigh 500 pounds because of the resistance and the shock of the freezing temperature. The cold water created serious problems for the cinematography as well, because both actors' lips turned noticeably blue from the frigid conditions. This forced the camera operators and directors to avoid shooting close-up shots of their faces during the water scenes, since the blue lips would have completely destroyed the romantic summer atmosphere they were trying to create. The crew members watching from the shore were bundled up in coats, hoods, and gloves to stay warm, while they filmed Swayze and Grey wearing nothing but light clothing and standing chest-deep in water that was barely above freezing. The contrast between the warmly dressed crew and the shivering actors made the whole situation even more surreal and uncomfortable for everyone involved. Fact 14. Baby's sister wrote her own song. Jane Brucker, who played Baby's flighty and self-absorbed older sister Lisa in Dirty Dancing, actually wrote and composed the song Hula Hana that her character performs during the talent show rehearsal scene, making her one of the few actors in the film to contribute original music to the soundtrack. In the movie, Lisa is portrayed as someone who is more interested in appearance and popularity than substance, and her talent show performance is meant to show the contrast between her shallow approach to entertainment and the deeper, more passionate dancing that Baby learns from Johnny. The scene serves to highlight how different the two sisters are in their understanding of art and self-expression. However, what most viewers don't realize is that the somewhat silly and lighthearted song that Lisa sings wasn't written by professional songwriters or composers hired for the film. Instead, Brucker herself created both the lyrics and the melody for Hula Hana, bringing her own musical talents to the role in a way that wasn't originally planned by the filmmakers. The fact that Brucker wrote her own song adds an interesting layer to her performance, since she was essentially creating a piece of music that was meant to represent her character's personality and interests. This gave her a unique level of creative control over how Lisa would be portrayed during this particular scene, allowing her to shape both the acting and musical elements of her character's moment in the spotlight. Brucker's songwriting contribution to Dirty Dancing demonstrates that some actors bring unexpected talents to their roles that can enhance the final product in ways that weren't anticipated during the original planning process. Her original composition became a memorable part of the film's overall musical landscape, even though it was meant to represent the more superficial side of the resort's entertainment offerings. Fact 15. The final lift was never rehearsed. The iconic lift that serves as the triumphant finale of Dirty Dancing was never rehearsed or practiced beforehand, making the version that appears in the movie the very first and only time that Patrick Swayze and Jennifer Grey ever attempted this crucial move together. This means that all the emotion, excitement, and relief visible on their faces during that climactic moment was completely genuine. Jennifer Grey has confirmed in interviews that she was so nervous about performing the lift that she deliberately avoided practicing it during the weeks leading up to filming the final scene. Her anxiety about the move was so intense that she refused to even attempt it during rehearsals, despite knowing that it would be the centerpiece of the movie's most important sequence. This decision to skip rehearsals meant that when the cameras rolled for the final talent show performance, both actors were essentially performing a high-stakes dance move without any preparation or guarantee that it would work correctly. The pressure was enormous, since this lift had to be perfect to provide the satisfying conclusion that the entire movie had been building toward. The gamble paid off spectacularly, as Swayze and Gray managed to execute the lift flawlessly on their first actual attempt. Gray later wrote in her memoir that what viewers see in that final scene represents real emotions between the actors, genuine gratitude, respect, and care that came from successfully completing such a challenging and meaningful moment together. The spontaneous nature of this final lift adds an extra layer of authenticity to the scene that probably couldn't have been achieved through extensive rehearsal and preparation. The visible relief and joy on both actors' faces reflects their actual feelings about nailing such an important moment without any practice, making their characters' triumph feel completely real and earned rather than merely performed.